This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. I am here with child prodigy, content master, podcasting whiz, and book publishing maven. That's right. He's got like 5 different jobs. Marc Guberti. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, David. Thanks so much for having me on.
So you have, man, you're like doing everything. You've got the podcast, multiple podcasts going, correct?
Yeah, I've got 2 going so far.
Author of a whole bunch of books. I guess my first question, just to get us rolling, is what content marketing mistakes do you see a lot of entrepreneurs making that either kind of drive you crazy or that are easily avoidable and easily fixed?
I think the biggest mistake people do is they create content without any kind of intention behind it, without any kind of purpose, because you could create all this content, but that doesn't mean people are going to see it. And even then, that doesn't mean you're going to monetize. So all the content I create has a purpose behind it. For podcasts, it is getting that experience, providing that for listeners, but also you get to meet a lot of new people, expand your network. For my blog posts, which I'm now back doing 3 a week, I slowed down on that, but now I'm back because of the repurposing potential. So the next time I write a book, it's not just me writing a book, it's me doing the outline and then turning some of that into blog posts. So all the free content I give, it can be repurposed into a product later on. It's something that allows me to grow my audience, expand my network. And it's something that also leads to certain offers, because if you keep pumping out free content without any kind of purpose or business model behind it, you don't have a business, you just have a hobby.
Yeah, what a great point. Now, am I correct that your first book was the 77 Powerful Methods to Get More Ebook Sales?
No, my first was Honest Ways to Make Money Online, which, the title sounds a little sketchy, but a lot of it is still good, but it's definitely more dated compared to some of the other books out there.
Let's talk about choosing, because I think a guy like you, I'm sure you get this comment a lot, you're so prolific in all these different modalities: online, hard copy books, podcast, web stuff, fantastic blog like you talked about. And we'll give people links to all of these things in the show notes when they go to thespeakingshow.com. All your books, your podcast, your fabulous website. Have you found that when your clients come to you, there's a little bit of almost like shock and awe, like, well, Marc, I want your help, but dude, even looking at your output is exhausting. So how do you balance that if an entrepreneur or an executive says, hey, we want to hire Marc, but oh my God, this guy's a fire hose, he's so prolific. How do we ramp that up without the overwhelm?
So I would say first start with the platform you are the most comfortable with. There are some people who they just like to write content. So I would say start with what you're comfortable with. If we're looking at we're comfortable with all of them, if we're looking for a let's grow a big business model, it would be ideal to do video, because you shoot the video, you put it on YouTube, wherever else you put it, but then automatically you have a podcast episode, because you just take that MP4, turn it into an MP3, an audio file, and then you have the podcast. And there are some people who they will embed the video, write a little blurb, make that their blog post, or they will transcribe the audio. So if you have video as your foundation, it's a lot easier to spread out the repurposing of your content. It's definitely possible with all the different ways of creating content, but video, if you have that as your base, it definitely makes it easier for repurposing.
Really, really smart idea. Everything that you're talking about is about having a plan and not just doing random blogging for the sake of blogging, random email newsletter for the sake of an email newsletter. I hear this from my clients sometimes. I'm sure you hear it even more. They say, well, Marc, I've been blogging for 5 years and it never brought me a dime. It never brought me a single client. And Marc, I have this podcast. I've got 225 episodes and it never did a thing for my business. Talk a little bit about baking the marketing and the lead generation and even a couple of pre-sales mechanisms into our content. How do we do that without coming across as pitchy or sketchy or salesy?
That's a really great point because there are content creators who they have been at it for years and they haven't made money. And the reason most content creators don't make money is they don't have a system for making money. They just throw the content and hope something lands. But the way that you set up your content for monetizing, a lot of it is based on scheduling. And it's not just having a content calendar, which is great, but it's matching up the content calendar with your promotions. So my first summit I did, the Content Marketing Success Summit, evergreen to this day. June 2017 is when we first actually launched it. In April and May of 2017, I was exclusively writing about content marketing, sharing that with my tribe. I was not exclusively, but for the most part, interviewing and publishing episodes with guests who talked about content marketing. So then I was warming my audience up to the idea of content marketing and mentioning the summit in some of those end of blog posts and some of those episodes as we got closer to it. So warming up your audience like that is one way. Another way is if you are an affiliate promoting someone's training course or book or whatever it may be, have that person on your podcast or interview them for a video, because then you can use that as the warm-up content. Because let's say I want to promote something that David's doing, and I just send out an email to my list, hey, this awesome guy David doing something really awesome. And that's how it starts. But it's different if I say, I recently had David on my podcast. Here's what we talked about. And then like a week later, David has this really awesome thing that I want to share with you guys. So that's another tactic to use your content. It's all about knowing how you make money with your content and then scheduling the content so it acts as like something that assists rather than just some random thing.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. Let me ask you another fun question. I mean, we could take this is probably 5 interviews in one, and we definitely have to have you back. We're a couple of minutes in. I'm like, oh, we have to have you back. Sorry. You have some great endorsements on your book and with some pretty big names, right? So Ramon Ray, Andy Crestodina, a whole bunch on the other books. What's your secret if somebody wants to get some high-profile endorsements, even inviting high-profile guests onto your podcast? If we're a no-name nobody, and you're far from a no-name nobody at this point, but we all start somewhere. If we're just starting out, how do we set our sights to that next level or that next level up even from there to get things like some premium podcast guests, some premium book endorsements? How does that work?
So the only way to get is if you ask. And in some cases, like these high profile people, like they will say yes, even if they don't know too much about you because they want the exposure. Like a lot of people think of it as, oh, I'm taking time away from their day and stuff like that, but you're giving them exposure. Now, there are some people who they have like millions of followers, so it's harder to reach those people. But if you focus on bringing in people who they're micro influencers, they're really influencers to a small subset, that can get you a lot of good interviews. Obviously, like this conversation is like leaning towards podcasting because I think it's so great. But then you get those micro influencers and you keep going bigger with the guests who you get on your show. And then eventually you could say, I had this person, and the other person on the show. So you have the social proof. Now, let's say though, we're doing, how do we get the first big influencer? Because that's what a lot of people want. So like the first person who like really has like millions of people following him who came on the show was Neil Patel for Breakthrough Success, episode number 4. So, I mean, we had some value in that episode, but I was not as crisp of a host or anything like that. But I just asked him and he said, okay. And he already knew about my work. So that helped a little bit. But even if no one knows about your work, here's what you do. No audience, no anything. Reach out to that person a lot. So it's actually perfect because I just finished an episode of Breakthrough Success with someone who got hired by Gary Vaynerchuk and worked with him for a bit. And the way he did that was he sent an email to Gary V every single day at like, the thing is though, like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. Like he was smart about this because he knew this is a time when Gary's like working out and like not in the full hustle and grind. So like he looked at the guy's whole schedule. Every day sent an email, made it a point to sit in the front row at an event Gary V was speaking at, and that was the first person who went up to Gary V and talked and made that connection happen. So, I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. And in that case, yes, it was. But if you want to reach big players, you got to do big player level work.
Yeah, what a great insight. And a lot of it is just about tenacity and focus and letting that person know that you're serious and you're not going to go away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you do an email every single day, I mean, that's commitment.
Yeah. I don't want to open the floodgates to people bombarding me with email, but that's okay because I'm not quite at the Gary V level yet. So I think we're fine for a couple years. Let me ask the other question, because now you're a very popular guy. There could be some no-name people coming up, especially maybe after this podcast, going, hey, can I have Marc on my show? If we get more invitations and, you realize, well, this person has no following, they have no platform, they have no nothing. How do you know which podcast interviews, guest blog posts, and et cetera to accept? Once you're the bigger fish, is there stuff that you should just be saying no to, or is it up to us to socialize the content no matter how big that host's audience might be?
I mean, I think if you present yourself the right way, you can literally get anyone on your show or anyone to engage with your content. So I don't think there's a limit, like if you feel like you're a small fish, like you're not able to talk to like the bigger players, like that's not true. But I do get a lot of emails from people who it's more about them being on the show than giving my audience value. So that's a big one. Another big one is have that conversation with me. Like Harris, who I'm bringing up again, who worked with Gary Vee. He and I had a whole bunch of conversation before I actually booked him. So you got to just engage and know, like, that's not the end. Obviously, I wouldn't push, like, if I say no and then, like, you reach out, like, take me, that's going to be annoying. But just have that conversation. If I see that you're someone who's like liked all my Instagram pictures or you retweet all my stuff, that's going to give you an extra priority. So just doing something like that, really engaging. If you think of the big fish as a person rather than a big fish, you are going to get that person's attention.
Yeah, what a great insight. Absolutely. And I think there's also an element of you have to dig your well before you're thirsty. In other words, don't just like, oh, I'm going to ask this person for a favor on Friday. I'm going to start retweeting them on Tuesday. I mean, this is a weeks, months, perhaps even years-long relationship. One thing I'm thinking of, and see if you like this idea, I'm just literally flashing in my mind now. You're going to write a book. You're going to have a podcast. You're going to do all these great things because you're going to follow Marc now and do everything Marc tells you to do. Would it make sense for us to have like a wish list of here's my first 20 high-profile podcast guests? Haven't even launched the podcast yet. When my book comes out, I want that Seth Godin endorsement, Guy Kawasaki, Marc Guberti, David Newman. I want all these guys on the back of my book. Months and months, maybe even years before that, you start building a relationship with these gurus, these experts. And then when it comes time to ask the favor, you're not asking a stranger, you're asking a friend.
Big difference, yeah.
So that would be an okay strategy for them to start thinking about that.
Oh, yeah. You got to think long-term with this. And even if you don't have a product you're thinking of now, you're going to have one someday if you turn this into a full-time business. So relationships are key.
I'm going to go geeky on you here for a second, take this in a whole different direction. Let's talk about search engine optimization. I think what a lot of people don't understand is that Amazon is a search engine. iTunes is a search engine. We think of Google as a search engine, YouTube now more and more as a search engine. But I'll tell you, if you want your book to be found and bought with other like items, are there some tricks of the trade let's talk specifically about iTunes for podcasting and then real quick, Amazon for books. Can a civilian, a non-SEO expert, what can we do and where should we focus some of our SEO thinking on those two platforms, iTunes and Amazon?
For iTunes, use keywords. Libsyn lets you use keywords. It depends on which podcast player you're using. Then put those keywords in the title of each episode. Make sure you weave them in there. Also, within that first paragraph, you want to include keywords, obviously in an organic way. That's the challenge with SEO. You want to put in all the keywords in all the places they have to go and include them as frequently as you can. Keyword density advice on that, by the way, it's anywhere from like 0.5% to 2.5%. I just remember those numbers from somewhere. But you want to have a mix of getting those keywords in there and also sounding like a human, because there are people who at the end of a video, like you'll see their keywords: content marketing strategy, content. I mean, they're going for the search engine. So that's a delicate mix. It definitely depends on the description, but include those keywords, include the name of the guest in your episode title, because sometimes people will search for that person. So it's like Seth Godin, for instance. People will search Seth Godin, and they may find one of my episodes where I interviewed Seth Godin through that search. So the more guests you have on your show also allows you to do more SEO. You optimize for more individuals who guests on other podcasts. So that's my tip for the podcast SEO. Another thing with the title, this is honestly something I have to do. So like my podcast, if you see it, is Breakthrough Success. That's it. But if you look at other podcasts, you'll see like title of podcast and then like another line of like what it's about. So you see people using extra words in their title. So it'd be like Breakthrough Success, something like achieve greatness in business and life, something like that. So people expand on it. For Amazon, very similar. You got your keywords. A difference with them though is categories. So there's a way on Kindle Direct Publishing. You reach out to Amazon. You say, hey, I have this book. I believe you give them title and your ISBN number. And you say, I want my book in these categories. And you list 10 categories because you do up to 10. And you look for the ones that the number one bestseller, relatively high sales rank. Because a way to become a bestseller on Amazon, you can have like a 200,000 book rank and be a number one if you put it in the right category, which is pretty ridiculous, but it is how the categories work. And so few people know, just reach out to Amazon through KDP. There's a support tab, and that's how you can get categories, which is really important. One more thing, also think of Amazon as an ad network, because book ads are getting big. There's a lot more ways to target. So also think of Amazon for the ads as well.
Yeah, really, really great advice. Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Marc, go back for a second. How did you score the Seth Godin interview on your podcast? Because I'm guessing he's not an easy guy to get.
Right. So I didn't email him every day, but I did something somewhat similar. So at one point, he had a company called Squidoo, which he founded, and a bunch of other people were involved. Very awesome place. They merged with Hub Pages since then. I miss Squidoo to this day. But I was very active in that community. I had over like 150 web pages that I created at a certain point. So I was very engaged and active on this platform that he created. I'm consuming his content at the same time, learning from him. And then I just decided, like, oh, I hear Seth Godin is speaking at this event near me. Let me go to this event and try to meet him. So there's actually a really legendary story here, because my mom went with me, and she has no idea who Seth Godin is. Like, she knows now, but like she had no idea who he was. So we had to like rush to get there because we were heading late. So what happens is she has to go to the bathroom, and she meets him, not knowing that much about him. And he's like, are you Seth Godin? He's like, yeah. And it's something like, I just ran like X amount of blocks to get here. I'm here for my son because my son loves your stuff. And then like they have a whole conversation. It's really funny. Like my mom is like also an entrepreneur, so she's got some awesome insights in that area also. But I mean, like that conversation is epic. So I met Seth at that event. It's hard to forget that kind of a conversation. And then I followed up. I continued emailing him, chatting with him. And this is well before the podcast. Like I'd say this was 3 years maybe before I had the podcast. And then I have this rapport, and then I asked him to be on the show. So it's not like I just cold mailed him and said, yo, do you want to come on?
Yeah, what a great example of what we were just saying about dig your well before you're thirsty and have a genuine relationship with somebody. Yeah. Let's talk about monetizing and sponsors. I think this is an overlooked opportunity. You know, you can monetize your blog, have sponsored content on your blog. Obviously, you have to be careful with all of these things. You can get sponsors for your podcast. What are a couple of monetizing strategies for blogs and podcasts that if we don't have millions of downloads yet, maybe we have a couple thousand, how do we start getting into that world?
I would still say sponsors, because There was actually an example where I reached out to a company. I said, hey, do you want to sponsor a show? Like a few months ago. And they said, we love where you're going, but we're not ready to do that yet. Just grow the show and come back to us. I grew the show. I went back to them with that relationship. And now they're going to be my first sponsor for Breakthrough Success. Part of that is also it's a radio show now, but they are going to be my first sponsor now because I had that relationship. So even if you don't think you are in the position, build those relationships now with the sponsors. But what else you can do is you can promote a product. So like in all my videos, I have all my books behind me. I mentioned one or two of them during each episode. I also mentioned that people can jump on a strategy call with me to see how we can work together. So that's another way. So if you can integrate your products and services into the conversation naturally, and maybe even throw some affiliate products in there, like there's nothing stopping you from like using an affiliate offer as if it were a sponsor. Because you could like ClickFunnels, I use them and I'm talking about ClickFunnels right now and they're going to get some more exposure from this. And you use your link, you get commissions every single month. So sponsorships, I feel like a lot of people think that's the main way, especially for podcasting, but there's certainly a lot of other ways out there.
I love that. And the affiliate links, if you use the product, love the product, know the product, it's like a do-it-yourself sponsorship.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's really smart. What would be the big picture if people were to take away one key central idea about any of what we've been talking about, the content marketing, the blogging, the podcasting, the books, what would be your biggest piece of advice for getting going the right way with any of this content marketing strategy?
I would say there are three parts. There's the creation, there's the marketing, there's the monetization. All three that I go a lot deeper in my summit in my book. But the way I feel like a lot of people approach that is wrong, because a lot of people, they create the content, then they think about how to market it, and then they maybe think about how to monetize it. You have to do that in reverse. You have to know how you're going to monetize your content. So you have to have the course in play. Then you have to know how you're going to market content you create so it reaches a lot of people. Have that marketing plan in place. For each piece of content I publish, I know where I have to promote it before I start writing the first word, recording the first minute. And then you actually create the content. And if you do it in that order, you even pick the right topics. So instead of doing a content marketing success summit and talking about habits all day long, you do that summit and you talk about content marketing. So most people do creation, marketing, monetization in that order. You need to do it in monetization, marketing, creation.
Love it. Think backwards to accelerate your success.
Exactly.
All righty. Now, people are drooling. I can hear the drool. How do they get connected and stay connected to Marc Land? Hook us up with links, anything you want. We're going to obviously connect your podcast, link up to your books. What else can people do to stay connected to you?
So in addition to the podcasts and the books, by the way, Breakthrough Success, that is the title of my upcoming book in July. We just put the pre-order page up today, so still relatively new. But in addition to that, I would recommend contentmarketingsuccesssummit.com for my summit. And if you want to get together with me for a free 20-minute strategy call, you could go to marcguberti.com/strategy, and we'll see if we can work together to take your business to the next level.
Absolutely. And if you guys have not heard of Marc until now, number one, where have you been? Number two, this is a guy who is the real deal because he only preaches what he has practiced and what he has had success with. So like I said, man, we're going to have you back. This was such a fantastic interview. Thank you. And we probably have 2 or 3 shows to go, but this first one was awesome and we'll do a lot more.
Sounds great. I look forward to each of them.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.